everyone. I'm so happy to be here in Austin. Actually, after my challenges of this past year or two, it's just great to be here, period. You know, it was on June 5th, 2014. Boy, that's a day you don't forget, that I went for a mammogram. I actually got the 3D mammogram, which is exponentially better. I think it'll eventually just replace the others when there's enough good machinery around the country. But even with the 3D mammogram that I went for that day, I got a clean bill of health. And then I walked across the hall and I had an ultrasound. And I heard those words that no woman ever wants to hear: you have breast cancer. And you know, I gotta tell you, I think the important thing to tell you is that no doctor ever told me to get that ultrasound. It was a fluke, quite frankly. About 6 years ago, I got sent to do an interview with Dr. Susan Love, one of the most renowned breast cancer experts in this country. She wrote the Dr. Love breast book. In between changing the batteries in the camera, she looked at me, and she's quite a woman. And she said, "You do get your mammograms, right, Miss Lunden?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I get them every year, and they're always really nerve-wracking because they're always calling me back in, and I always freak out, like, oh my God, did you see something?" And they always say, "No, actually, we can't see anything because you have such dense, fibrous breast tissue." With that, of course, Dr. Love looked at me and said, "Well, if you have dense tissue, then you need to also be getting an ultrasound." Thank God I listened to that woman. And I added an ultrasound to my yearly screening because otherwise I wouldn't have known to get that test that day. And I would have walked out that door, another year, another clean mammo, thinking that everything was fine, when I had a very fast-growing, aggressive tumor in my right breast. I will tell you that after 9 months of treatment, 16 rounds of chemo, 6 weeks of radiation, a lumpectomy, and a few blood transfusions, I am now officially a survivor. I am NED, no evidence of disease. But you know something? I approached that battle with breast cancer with the same attitude, certainly, that I have used all throughout my life and my career. And I think it's really important that we share our stories. Every time we share our stories, someone learns and someone is inspired and motivated. But today I want to not only share with you my story, I want to talk about us. I want to talk about women and the challenges that I think we face today in managing our lives and our careers and just finding some kind of balance, because I think we all know that we're really good at taking care of everyone else in our lives. However, I think we all also know that we need to be reminded every now and then to take better care of ourselves. As I think back on all of the successful people, the presidents, the entrepreneurs, all of them that I've interviewed over the years, you know, I think that there are certain traits that you find kind of like runs through all of them, and that's certainly one of them. They all go out and they make their own success. So I think in all my years of interviewing people, I just think that I have found that the common thread is that they find their purpose, they find their joy, and they act on it. I once heard a wonderful saying: there are 2 great days in our life: the day you were born and the day you discover why. Sometimes you have to be willing to risk not being great in order to get the chance to learn how to be great. I spent that first year in New York City kind of learning my craft in some pretty fierce competitiveness. And a lot of times I said, what did I do this for? Why didn't I stay in that cushy anchor job back, you know, when I was a big fish in a little pond? Now I'm running from burning buildings to dead bodies under a bridge. However, deep down I knew the answer. If I really wanted to get to the top of my profession, I needed to be out there in the trenches. I needed to be, you know, out of my safe suburban environment in Northern California where I had grown up. I needed to see the poverty and the crime and the social and political injustices so that I would have those layers of empathy and compassion and understanding if I ever really wanted to sit in an anchor seat at a national level to really understand what people struggled with. By that time, my motto had become, whenever anyone asks you if you can do something, for God's sakes, just say yes, and then go find out how to do it. That is how people build amazing lives. Just say yes. You know, I think that the modern woman's dilemma really is, now that we have it all, how do we do it all without feeling overwhelmed or inadequate? How do we keep ourselves healthy through it all? How do we revive and refresh so that we are able to continually reinvent ourselves and love ourselves at every age? There's one thing that anyone could point to is, what's the one thing that's gotten you through a career, all of life's challenges? It is a positive attitude, and you can never underestimate the power of that. You know, people often ask me, what was the hardest part of doing Good Morning America for 20 years? And I could probably cite politicians who were testy and didn't want to answer, or rock stars who were stoned and couldn't answer. But I ought to tell you, I think the biggest challenge was consistently projecting a positive attitude every single morning at 7 a.m., no matter what was going on in my life, because I knew that my attitude was the first thing that would affect you as the viewer, even before whatever the news was that I had to deliver that day. And I guess I really impressed this on my children. They call me Bazooka Joan. But one of my daughters, Lindsay, she now is the vice president of my company, but when she was in about, I don't know, maybe the 5th grade, she came home and said, "Mom, I heard from the best inspirational speaker today, and you're going to love this story." And this was the story. Some scientists wanted to find out if they could change a complete pessimist into an optimist and a complete optimist into a pessimist. So they went to a preschool, and they found a little boy who found the good in nothing. If it was a beautiful sunny day, he just said, "Ugh, I'm going to be hot and sweaty." Then they found a little girl who found the good in everything. She said, "Oh, it's raining? That's okay. It'll make the flowers grow." So they took the little girl and the little boy back to a lab, and they put the little boy into a room with fire trucks and cars and video games, everything a little boy could possibly want to play with. And they said, "Have fun, we will check on you in an hour." Then they took the girl and they put her in a room with nothing but horse manure. So an hour later, they checked back on the little boy, and he was just sitting right in the middle of everything. And they said, "Why aren't you playing with the toys?" And he said, "Well, clearly I'm not going to have time to play with everything, so I'm not playing with anything." Then they went into the room with the little girl. She was jumping up and down. She was trying to diving in, and she came up, and they said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "With all this evidence, there's got to be a pony in here somewhere." A positive attitude. It really is what, it not only has a big impact on others, it has a big impact on us and how we approach things in our life, and so that we don't get mixed up in all of the dramas of life. One of my favorite sayings ever was Mark Twain, who said, "I've been through some terrible things in my life, some of which actually happened." But it's harder these days, I think, because of Facebook and emails and texts. It's very easy to get distracted and not be paying attention to our families and to taking downtime for ourselves. And I'm just going to tell you one story. I was at a basketball game. She's the hockey mom. I'm the basketball mom and the soccer mom. But coming off the court one night, this little boy was coming off, and the father went over to him and slapped him on the back and said, "Good game, son." And the little boy looked up at him and said, "Oh, I didn't know my game was playing on your iPhone." I'll let you think about that one for a minute. You know, our kids notice when we're tuned into our electronics and not tuned in to them. And it's also really important that we take the time to shut down and to shut things off and to be able to refresh and to revive ourselves. And we need to pay attention to our own health. Because did you notice that we're living a lot longer these days? Like about 3 decades? You know, in 1930 in this country, the life expectancy was 59 and a half. Like, it's hard to even think of that. By 1960, it was up to 70. Today, it's about 81 for women, about 75 or so for men. My husband says that the reason why men die sooner is because they want to. But it is true that these days, we really have to pay even more attention to investing in our health today, because we want to make sure that we are going to be healthy and that we're going to safeguard our longevity and that we're going to be healthy in those extra 10, 20, 30 years. And I think we all write our own life story. The pen is in our hand. And I know that from the day I was diagnosed, I started journaling. And I wrote at the top of that journal, "I will survive." Your story is in your hands. And I wish you exciting chapters, exciting reinventions, and healthy later years. Thank you, everyone.